So thanks for joining us, everyone. My name's Andy Bates, Executive Director of the Global Cyber Alliance. Really pleased to have with us today Commissioner Ian Dyson of the City of London Police and Chris Enser, Deputy Director of NCSC, the National Cybersecurity Centre in the UK. So welcome with us today, gentlemen. Thanks again for joining us. So I think the question to both of you, and I think we'll maybe start with Ian, is so would you say that citizens of the UK and of the world have a right to use the internet securely? In other words, would you call it a human right, and is it an expectation that the internet should be a lot safer than it is today?
Andy, thanks for the question. It's probably worth just saying that the reason you're talking to me is because I'm now the National Police Lead on cyber in the UK. I think language is probably important. We shouldn't stress over language, but is it a human right? I think from a public servant policing point of view, human rights have a slightly different connotation, which is about what are the rights of the citizen against the government. What I would say, Andy, is I think rather than, does the citizen have a right to use the internet securely? I think there should be an expectation that they can use the internet and cyberspace securely, and that the expectation should be matched by government doing what it can and the citizen doing what they should be doing as well. So, for example, the National Cybersecurity Centre is the sort of manifestation of government protecting its citizens from threat online and in the cyber world in the same way that perhaps the military protect its citizens in the physical world. And then you have an expectation that when you do business with an organisation or a business, that business is working to make sure that the data that it has on you and the business it transacts with you is being done in a safe and secure way. And then there is absolutely an expectation, in my view, on the individual citizen to be responsible when they're operating online and to do their business in a way that you could say, yes, you are behaving reasonably, accepting that you may not always get it right, but at least you're doing all you can to protect yourself.
Brilliant, thanks, Ian. And Chris, your views, please.
At the end of the day, all our lives now are lived online, or for the majority of us. I mean, there are still people who are not connected, and there's various reasons for that. So we can't always assume that everybody's going to be online. But online is where we live at the moment, and so it's important that we can keep people safe and secure. And they have to do a lot, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But from an NCSC perspective, we've been pioneering something called active cyber defence, and this is all about how can we do some of that stuff on behalf of the citizens and on behalf of organisations, not just us as NCSC, but us working with industry, us working with the telecom providers, us working with the likes of with Andy to protect people centrally. So Active Cyber Defence got a number of programmes, things like reporting emails. You can report your bad emails. You can report them now, and they get looked at. So we can take sites down, or we can look at how do we protect people from a central perspective. So that's really where we're going with active cyber defence. But it can't be done on its own. It has to be done with everybody taking some responsibility in this space.
Which I think brilliantly echoes Ian's point that although everybody has a right to be safe on the internet, everybody has a responsibility as well. So I think while we're with you, Chris, everybody's always talking about a lack of skills within the cyber industry, and many people, I think, in the UK and the wider world feel like they need to be more upskilled to stay safe online. I know the Cyber First programme from yourself and NCSC has been a major leap forward in this space. Do you want to give us a few words just to explain Cyber First to everyone, please? Yeah,
so Cyber First started about 5 years ago now, and it was really about how do we identify and nurture talent from quite a young age? Because often by the time people have come through the education system, they may not think of technology as a place that they want to work, and we want to change that perspective. So Cyber First is all about how do we identify great talent, how do we nurture it into a job in cybersecurity. That's really what Cyber First is about.
Ian, Commissioner Dyson, back to you. So what does a police body like COLP, City of London Police, do to protect our rights and the citizens on the internet today?
Fundamentally, Andy, what we try to do is to protect the citizen in the same way that policing protects you in the physical world. So what we do is we look at, can we prevent crime? Once a crime has occurred, is there an opportunity to investigate it and to find the perpetrator and to then put them through the criminal justice system? Now, we fully recognise that the online world is very different to the physical world. The perpetrators are far more dispersed. They are global. and that sort of end game of the criminal justice system shouldn't be the be all and end all. And therefore, we've got to look at how we invest in that prevention, upstream protection piece. So every force in the country is now investing and has invested resource into having those skilled people who can offer cyber protection advice to the citizen. And unfortunately, that is often after the event. But what we know is that many people are vulnerable to repeat cybercrime online. So actually getting into them and giving them the advice to prevent them being a repeat victim is really impactful in terms of being able to stop repeat offending. And then I think policing as an ecosystem, i.e. in other words, all of the police forces across the country collectively, are working at things like looking at how we can operate online. I think the days when there was a bit of a view that the internet was unpoliceable have long gone. Policing is on the internet in the same way that we operate in the physical world. And therefore, whether it be dark web, whether it be sex offenders online, whatever it is, policing is operating in those spaces and protecting the citizen. The frustration sometimes is we can't and we won't always tell people exactly what we're doing, but that is the same, no different to other forms of policing. But I think the reassurance I would give people is, do not think that cyberspace is unpoliceable. It absolutely is, and we're out there and we're working with you.
So Chris, the Cyber First programme I think has been brilliant over the years it's been running, and we from GCA have been really pleased to participate and help with the programme. I think the students have all learned a lot from industry and from NCSC, but what have you and what do you think the industry has learned from the students during the programme?
So we've learned an awful lot. So the first thing I'd say we've learned is the level of enthusiasm for learning, not just on the courses, but when they're in placement and all that kind of thing. If you think about it, so over the summer, we run around 20 odd courses, and students give up their time to go on those courses, and they're really, really keen to learn. And that surprised me that people are prepared to do that. Expect the unexpected. That's the other thing I've learned. I go along and talk on as many of the courses as I can, or each year I try and sample them, and I'll take some questions wherever. You never quite know what they're going to ask. You kind of think, I've had all the questions, and then something comes up that you think, hadn't thought of that one. So they always keep you on your toes. I think there's a benefit as well from bring people together. So this year's been unusual. So we've managed to give more places. So 1,700 places over the summer, but they were all online, and I think it was great because it got to a lot more people. But there is a lot of benefit from bringing people together. And whenever I go and talk to the students on the courses, it's all about the benefits they get from the team working and working together and being in an environment together. Because they learn a lot more from that, because it's not just about the technical stuff, it's how you interact with each other and things like that. So that's something that I think is really important. It's not about being all online. It has to be a mixture of delivery. I think we've also run some single-sex courses. So we were keen to experiment with different ways of presenting cybersecurity, presenting courses, presenting learning. And so every year we offer a girls-only option, so that you can have 40 or 50 girls together working on a course, and that's proved exceptionally beneficial. And getting this from the girls on there, because often there's a different dynamic when you've got mixed teams, and when it's girls together, they seem to work much better. It was interesting. I was talking to one of the people who look after the people on the course, and she was a teacher, and she said to me, normally she wouldn't support sort of single-sex teaching. But she said, having seen how the girls had worked together, she was going to go away and rethink how she looked at this kind of stuff, because she saw the real benefit from it. And I suppose the last thing I'd say is we've learned a lot about how you support the students. So we get a lot of neurodiversity. We get a lot of students who may be away from home for the first time. And so you need to put the pastoral care around it. And so that's been a really important part. And it's really important to us that we've teamed up with an organisation called Small Peace, which are a charity. And they're really great at doing the pastoral care and looking after the students. You kind of think a student who'd been, so most of our students, when we run the academy, which is after their first year in university, would be used to living and sort of looking after themselves on their own. It's surprising that's not always the case. So again, expect the unexpected.
Brilliant, thanks, Chris. And I think if we can add to that, as GCA has been very active in Cyber First over the past 2 years, we found that bringing a bunch of university-trained 20-year-olds into the organization who just ask the really great questions like, why is the internet like this? And some of those questions for me are worth their weight in gold and drives our roadmap going forward. So touching on that, and I think back to Ian, so your point, Ian, about that people have a responsibility to care for themselves on the internet as well as have the right to a cleaner internet. GCA, as you know, has created a bunch of free tools, Quad 9, which we worked with IBM to create, and our toolkit for small businesses, then one for elections and democracies. Where do you think GCA goes next? What do we, GCA or the industry, need to do to make your life easier as the senior police officer in the UK responsible for cyber? How can we help you some more?
Some of the tools that you've produced already have got real potential to really make a difference, particularly the toolkit for small businesses, which I think is really welcomed and overdue in terms of the need for businesses. I'm not sure I'm going to give you a perfect answer, but I do think that there is an awful lot now compared to not that many years ago of tools and sort of applications that will support the business protecting itself better online. I do think that the gap still is the citizen, the individual, and again, quite where there would be a particular tool, I'm not sure. But if I look at the sort of trends and what we're seeing in cybercrime, there is no doubt at all that there is a real challenge of young people and social media. And whilst there is an absolute responsibility, I think, that is not being picked up on the social media companies to better protect the people who are subscribing to their particular platform, I do wonder whether there's somewhere in that mix of something that will enable people to make better choices around who is able to access, how they can filter sort of comments and stuff. There is no doubt, we all know terrible, terrible stories of misery and young people harming themselves because of their sort of exposure to social media. And I do think it's a bit naive of us all if we think, well, as indeed lots of people of my age think, well, if you don't like all that, don't go on social media. I think that's not really an answer for younger people these days, because it's such an integral tool to how they actually interact with their friends and their families and their communities. So I think, somewhere there, and I'm not a technician, but I think something there that helps the individual make better choices is something I would be really interested to sort of support.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Ian. And you kind of touched nicely on the point that is social media a human right as an extension to is the internet a human right? And I think it's a nice exploration of the individual is both a young person, a person at work, a person in their home time, or the elderly maybe. So and I think also nicely touching on the issue of cyberbullying and social media. So I think that's a good cue back to Chris, which is, I know, Chris, in one of your many responsibilities, certification and approval programs within NCSC fall in your wheelhouse. Can we talk some more about maybe Internet of Things? And I know there's been some recent NCSC guidance. I think really I'm looking for how can the citizen in the UK look to NCSC and say, this scheme is saying that I've now bought a safe piece of equipment or gone to a safe place in the internet?
So I don't think it's just NCSC are looking at, because we work in partnership with other government departments. We've got the Department of Digital Culture, Media and Sport, and they've been, doing a lot in the Internet of Things space. Where we come in is the future we see is we want to make technology easy to be secure. So it's not down. We talked earlier about individuals having a responsibility to keep things secure. And we want to move away from that. Technology should come out of the box so it's safe for everybody to use. So, there's a lot talked about Internet of Things and having default passwords that anybody can guess, not being able to update the software. And so what we're trying to do is encourage the industry to take a responsibility to ensure that, it provides things that are safe to start with. And where NCSC comes in is we use our expertise and the brand, the NCSC brand's quite powerful to to kite mark or designate things that are good. So we create standards, and then we work with industry to assess whether those standards are being met. And if they are, that's great. And we're quite proud to stand next to companies who offer services that meet those standards, or products that meet those standards, because people can have trust in them. And slowly over time, we hope that, you know, the market itself will change, so that security is seen as a really important thing that you think about when you're buying, and hopefully we can help in that by using our brand and expertise to do that.
So many people are looking towards their strategy towards the year 2025. So really, the question to both gentlemen: what about the future? So whether we look at technology, human rights, regulation, education and training, where do you, if you could crystal ball gaze into the next 5 years, what do you hope would be the thing that's going to change, or change in the internet and the planet in the next 5 years? And maybe if we start with Chris, please.
So I'll come back to maybe what I said earlier, which is having technology that's secure by default or secure by design, so that when it comes out of the box, you don't have to worry about, you know, whether it's got a password anybody can guess on it. That it's ready to go and it's secure. So that's the first thing, is moving away, perhaps moving away from passwords, moving away to other ways of authenticating. That would be a really good thing. But I always come back to skills, because it always comes down to skills. And, you know, what I would like to see is in an improvement in how we teach technology and in through the education system. We should be thinking about a world where we're not just thinking about people using technology, you know, being able to program technology, but let's have people in the UK thinking about how we invent the next technology, how we invent the next computers, how we invent the next telecom systems, you know, how we invent the next communication protocols. That's the vision that we should be looking for. That's the people that we want to produce the education system. That for me would be great.
Hard to follow Chris on that, because I think that's a really great exposition of perhaps where I'm thinking. I guess there's probably a couple of things I would add to that, Andy, which perhaps sort of reflect maybe my profession as a police officer dealing with victims and that which is this. I think, you know, one of the challenges that we've had in the past, and we still have a little bit, I think, in law enforcement and in perhaps wider society, is that crime online isn't in your face in terms of harm, in terms of violence. You know, the HMIC did an inspection of fraud, for example, which, as we know, is pretty predominantly online now, and said the challenge for policing fraud is it doesn't bang, bleed or shout. So it never quite gets the priority. I think there are certain areas of the cyberspace that are getting that attention now: child abuse and child images, and the sort of trolling and abuse online is starting to up the ante. But I think as a sort of a greater understanding and appreciation of the very real harm that online crime does cause, to get that into a better place than where I think it is at the moment would be what I would want to see, in addition to the things that Chris said, which I think are spot on about secure by design and you know, reducing the number of risky choices that the consumer has to make. That's probably how I would describe it.
Brilliant, thank you, Ian. And I think you make a great point, which is people watch murder detective programs on the TV. Nobody really dramatizes cyber just yet, and yet, as you say, the harm is real and it's tangible, and it's bringing it into the public consciousness. So great, thank you very much for your thoughts today, gentlemen, and we wish you well. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.